are now tuned in to the Free Play Media Podcast Network.
We're live, Chris Denman, and I'm going solo. I'll say hello to our guest in just a second. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Real quick, we've got a special guest in studio. Excited to have him here, but I got to tell you about Logboat Brewing. Great sponsor of ours. You can get their beers at Busch Stadium all summer long. The Bobber Lager is available. Also, big thanks to Casino Queen, and look forward to some more events at the casino with us in tow. Special conversation today. Chris Gethard in town. What's up, Chris? Good to see you, man.
Good to see you too.
Yep,
I'm
excited
looking
to have
forward to
you.
a special conversation.
It's very special,
That's
extremely
nice to hear.
special. You're at Helium this weekend.
I am.
You all need to go out. I've heard a ton of people excited saying, speaking of special, how special it is that you're here in St. Louis performing, man. It's
Very happy to be here.
Is it the comedy community that gets behind you? Like we were just chit chatting a little bit off air, but I feel like there's been a bit of a swell of people that are really excited. That doesn't always happen with comics that come through. So you've got a good support system,
That's good
man.
to hear.
Yeah,
They show up in the seats, man.
yeah, they gotta pay those
nice.
tickets.
I have a nice cult. It's like I think comedy nerds and punk rockers really have my back, and then I have a podcast that went in a whole different direction. So then I'll get a lot of it's my podcast. It's a lot of I think moms who are maybe secretly more badass than they let on.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Give me the details on the podcast. I'm not aware of it, bro.
I have a podcast called Beautiful Anonymous, where I just tweet out a phone number and then I take one phone call, and I'm not allowed to hang up for an hour, and they never tell me their name, so they can
That's
say whatever they
fantastic.
feel like. And yeah, I thought it was going to be like kids messing with me because my TV show has always been crazy and driven,
Sure.
A lot of, like I said, like a lot of the artsier punk rock kids. And the first episode, they featured it on This American Life, and it just blew up, and it just latched on with it's cool. It's you'll get a lot of the calls will be someone that's yeah, I'm a mom and I raised 3 kids, but quietly on the side, I've also got this side hustle that'll blow your mind, and I'm like, this is cool.
So it got super interesting very quickly.
It's really cool.
I'm sure you did it too, because you expected kids to call it and mess with it. I did that. Whenever I was growing up, I would have had a hell of a time screwing with someone like you on the phone. You would have too, I'm sure.
I mean, that's what my TV show is just me building the show I would have wanted to prank call when I was 14 years old. That's the whole goal. It's what's the show my brother and I would have loved tormenting, and then realized, oh wait, this is actually a show for us. So yeah, it's a lot of my career is just opening up phone lines and letting people tell me, either insult me or tell me dark secrets or whatever they feel like. It's really up to them.
And living in that space with them in that time, that's so interesting. I have to check that out. I feel terrible. I haven't heard that yet, but
it's who cares?
Who cares? I'm gonna check that out.
So
Chris Gethard Show.
Too much content. Too much content. In
It's
this world.
everywhere, man.
Part of the problem.
Do you actually consume any content yourself?
Oh yeah, I love content.
Yeah,
who doesn't love content?
Right,
It's 2018, baby. You gotta love content.
You absolutely have to.
Yeah.
What are your favorite listens or podcasts? Or
Let's see.
Are you still super into music? I'm guessing.
I like music a lot. I will say I have it. The DIY punk rock scene in New York was very, very strong, and a lot of the best venues have closed. So I'm a little more disconnected with it. It's just I think notoriously real estate in New York is a really tough thing, and a lot of the neighborhoods that artists will go and take over a warehouse and turn it into a venue.
Right.
Then it becomes a spot that people go, oh, all the artists are hanging out there, and now all of a sudden there's an Abercrombie. That really has blown out a bunch of it. So I'm a little less connected with music than I was maybe 4 or 5 years ago, unfortunately. But
I find that as I get older, that happens too. I'm like, Japandroid's still cool, or I'm like, I don't know. I'm still listening to the same albums over and over.
Outside of any demographics or real estate trends, I'm also 38 now. I'm just tired. I'm just also kind of tired and don't stay out as late.
Right.
But yeah, there's still, I tell you, I've gotten, I really like podcasts like everybody else. Like I like a good true crime There's a podcast called Criminal I'm obsessed with, and I like wrestling podcasts. Colt Cabana is a friend of mine.
That guy's great, man. He's a great
awesome.
storyteller. He does a really good job with that. So you're 38. I just turned 34, and how crazy is it to see wrestling? And maybe it was always kind of like this, and just media is bigger in general. Wrestling, like we're seeing McMahonisms in the White House now. Like Vince McMahon's modern day P.T. Barnum is what I usually say, and that's like seeing that whole world just come alive, and you see the money attached to wrestling too. Yeah. I'm guessing you've been a wrestling fan your whole life.
My whole life.
Yeah.
But then there's also like the countercultural side of wrestling too, which is when the small leagues, like for me, for people our age, it was ECW, right?
Yeah,
it was
sure.
like the alternative, and now you got PWG, and even like NXT is like their brand within a brand that's like the smaller, more punk rock thing. You got the New Japan thing, all the Bullet Club stuff. So it's really interesting to watch culturally, and like I'm kind of obsessed with the old territory days and reading all the stories about that. And St. Louis was such a big part of that.
Wrestling at the Chase.
Sam Mushnick, right, was the big promoter out here.
Right.
He could kind of run it and stand up to the McMahons. So I'm a big nerd for that. So I really like Colt, and I listen to Jericho's podcast. I think is very good. And then I tell you what, being on the road all the time, the Bruce Pritchard podcast I really love. But I will say, like, that's a good one when you're like, no, you're going to be sitting in an airport on a layover, and you're like, yeah, I'll listen to somebody talk about Bam Bam Bigelow for 3.5 hours. I'll do a 3.5 hour episode just on Jake Roberts. I'm like, okay, I don't know who your target audience is beyond me, beyond a guy who's been obsessed with wrestling his whole life and has a layover right now.
Right, who happens to have the time. Have you had the opportunity to interview Jake Roberts?
I have not. I've always wanted to. Is it awesome?
Honestly, too, and my co-host Travis Farrell is a huge wrestling fan as well. Couldn't be here today. He was geeking out. I got to geek out because I've kind of let wrestling go when I was like 9 or something, right? So, but to go back and kind of be transparent, like I'm talking to Jake the Snake right now. That was a big deal. But then for him to be so open, and it helps that I'm assuming he's still on the right track, that there was a redemption story involved, right? But to this day, I don't know, I interview 3 to 5 people every week for the last 3 years, I guess, and he's up there, like top 10 for sure.
I will tell you, it's with the TV show, and I don't want to start complaining too much or cause any trouble, but
this is a big trouble starting show.
Well, here's the thing. You can tell already, my interests in pop culture are a little more fringe.
Sure.
And a television network, it's not always their interest. And I was like, they were like, you love wrestling. Let's get some, wrestlers on there. You'll be excited. I was like, great. We had an episode lined up. I was like, let's book Jake the Snake.
Right.
And then we met this guy who manages all these wrestlers. He's like, I can get you Honky Tonk Man and one of the Bushwhackers and this guy and that, like all these old timey guys. I was like, let's get them all at once. We'll have a big panel. They were like, no, let's get someone more modern. And I was like, oh, you guys are missing the boat because I can get everybody in their 30s excited to listen to the Honky Tonk Man and Jake the Snake. Then they're like, we should try to get John Cena. I'm like, I think you guys, first of all, he's a little bit big. And second of all, our show is live on Tuesday nights. They also have a show that's live on Tuesday nights.
They're not fine-tuning their choices.
Do a little research. But imagine just 10 people call in and you can talk to Greg the Hammer Valentine and Brutus the Barber Beefcake.
I think that would be huge. I think they're kind of discounting the upswell of play. Yeah, absolutely there too.
And you got to get those old guys from the 80s because they still lived that wrestler life. I want to hear. Like I want to talk to guys,
prostitutes,
exactly,
steroids. I
want to get the Iron Sheik. I want to like turn around to Brutus the Barber Beefcake and be like, hey, what's the weirdest drug you've ever taken? And Brutus is not a guy who's going to hold back on that answer.
Hell no.
He's going to be like, I once accidentally straight up just snorted fertilizer. And I knew what it was. I was just, I want those stories, but...
Yeah, I think there's a market for that too. You see Vice going after a lot of those fringe kind of markets and areas. As far as TruTV, the Chris Gethard Show, in limbo right now for another season.
Limbo. People think I'm messing with. Sometimes I'm very into because I love wrestling, like emotional manipulation, where I'll be like, "What's gonna happen?" This and that, and I'll try to like tease it. No, it is true. I have no idea what's going on. I did just find out we're the lowest rated show on the network, so that doesn't bode well for us. But I weirdly am proud of that. Like, who wants to be the 7th best show on TruTV? I'll take 15 out of 15, thank you.
Well, if you do, in fact, have a small following, they're mighty because people love your show.
Yeah.
They're obsessed would be a better word. You've had on the P. Diddy's of the world.
Yeah, P. Diddy, Will Ferrell, Paul Rudd, Lena Dunham. Like, we get people who are big.
So they took
names.
a chance on you, and TruTV in the last, since the prank show, I'm an idiot.
Jokers.
Impractical Jokers. I don't mean to be disrespectful there. Since they look for comedy content every pilot season.
And they've done right by us. I'm not trying to like talk bad. They took a big chance on our show. We were a public access
But they knew what
show.
they were going with.
They knew. I mean, there's like 200 hours of it that have existed online on YouTube, all our public access years. And they were so excited, and they really do champion us. And they're like, yeah, this is such a cool thing. But, you know, it's kind of our job to make the content and their job to, you know, get middle America to like it. And I don't know if we're the most middle American friendly show in the world, much to my own chagrin. I do these things and I think they're going to be really popular. Like, I'm like, yeah, let's bring on MMA fighters and just have them mercilessly beat me for an hour on live TV.
Oh my gosh.
Call in.
Who was that?
That was these two guys named Gary Tonin and Eddie Cummings, who are members of this group called the Danaher Death Squad. They're these
Gary
jiu-jitsu
Tonin
fighters.
came in?
Yeah, Gary just switched over to MMA. And there's a whole thing where it was like we'd show a word on screen, and if you could call in and get me to say that word, they'd just bolt on screen and just tool me.
Oh my!
And I'm like, oh yeah, that's like mainstream comedy, man. And then America is like, we disagree.
Okay,
but I love it.
So you have a meeting, and they say we're giving you another season, which is huge, and you're like, right? You're getting to create. You're being paid for that. All these things. You have people that have jobs because of your show.
Yeah.
What do you do to change it up then? Or do you, and you say, hopefully people catch on and they're just going to take another fly on another season?
Forward?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough call, right? Because in one sense, like you said, there's about, you know, anywhere from like 70 to 100 people that have at least part-time employment because of this show with my name on it. I take that really seriously, you know? Like
those jobs are real tough to get.
They're real tough to get, and you know we're in New York. It's still an entertainment hub, but LA is an easier place for comedy, and you know these shows. Let alone on a thing where we're all friends, and a lot of these people are people who worked for free for years on a public access show, and now they have their first jobs in entertainment. I take that really seriously. At the same time, I know. You know, we built something that has a lot of integrity and a lot of heart, and it's been around for 9 years in some fashion or other. And the people who love it for a reason. And it's one of these weird things where it's like, I'd love to keep it going forever, but not if it's not fun and not if it's not, you know, true to itself. And, you know, I think all the people who work on it, who have those jobs, would rather it go away than have it turn into something that is just sort of cookie cutter. And
yeah, you can't turn into like an NBC late night show, right? That's not.
No, I can't put on a suit and start telling monologue jokes now. Who wants that? And sometimes there is pressure on us to do like, hey, when are you going to find your
carpool karaoke?
I was just going to say, when are you going to find your carpool karaoke? And I'm like, probably never. I'm sorry to say,
right.
Like, and it's just not my thing.
Unless somebody's punching you while you're driving the car, right?
Yeah. Well, and even beyond just like the shock or violence aspect, I think. There's a lot of stuff out, and this is no disrespect to James Corden.
No.
I have a lot of respect for him, but there are a lot of places where you can get, you know, sort of like easily digestible, easily disposable. Oh, that was a cute thing. I watched it. I enjoyed it. Saw it on my aunt's Facebook wall and had a chuckle and move on. And I do think there's maybe people who are a little more stressed out or who want to be a little more challenged. And you know, I grew up in the punk rock world where there was like real barriers of entry in an intentional way. Like they looked weird and they sounded bad. And if you could push past that, it's a really beautiful culture. And my show is an hour long. I grew up on Letterman. You know, I grew up on Howard Stern, like stuff that was long form, and that was part of the joy of it. That's not 2018, right? Everything now needs to be 30 seconds, 1 minute.
Isn't that tough?
If it's 5 minutes, people think you're crazy for the attention span. But I'm like, I don't know. Letterman used to have bits that you'd have to tune in every night for years for them to be at their funniest.
Understand, yeah.
Just the relentlessness with which he did these idiotic things. So I'm pretty dedicated to the integrity of some stuff that just doesn't work right now. And I just have to own up to it and trust my gut that will, you know, be something I'll be more proud of on my deathbed than if I...
Do you walk that line? Because you work with Will Ferrell. I mean, that's a guy who... certainly has embraced the more commercial-friendly vehicles. I'm not going to bash him for that. Holy cow, that guy's done so much with his career.
The best.
And not even picking on him, but a lot of people make those choices. You're like, why would they do that? It's like, I don't know. Have you ever been able to secure money for the next 4 generations of your family? Like, that's huge.
But then Will, I think why Will likes working with us, I think why Will lent his name to us is because he'll also do a movie in Spanish.
Yes.
And he'll also go do a series of commercials that only air in Milwaukee, where you're like, what is going on?
Right.
You know, or he'll go do all those things in character as a fake newscaster. And I think for a lot of comedians, you have this vision when you start out where you're like, I'm gonna do it my way and stick to my guns and change the game. And then the game is like, no thanks.
Right.
And I'm not saying my show has changed the game. The numbers have proven otherwise. But content-wise, we do make the show that I think a lot of people have in their head when they're starting out.
Right.
And I think a guy like Will Galifianakis is an EP on our show too. He helped sell it with his name. And I think they look at our show and they're like, wow, you guys have just, at this point, like,
you're living, man.
And like you've quintupled down on just doing this not commercially friendly thing. And there's some joy in that for, I think, some of the elder statesmen.
You know, and maybe that's why they do a couple of those movies that, and again, too, I'm not saying they don't enjoy those, but they're also now able to help provide opportunities or be a part of opportunities that are more creatively satiating, right?
Yeah, and it's easy for a guy like me to yell punk rock, you know, for the first 10 years of my career where nobody's particularly interested in giving me money. And past couple years, I've gotten to a point where I'm making a decent living and there's more to lose now. And it's become a little tough for me. And also, I have a TV job. I have some money now where it's like, yeah, the network's breathing down my neck saying they want X, Y, and Z. And it's more of a bluff for me to call when I have a mortgage to pay and I have a wife and I have a standard of living. And so it's easy for us to look at those choices that some of the Hollywood people going, why are you making this? And it's like, well, here's why you're making this. Because you got $70 million. Like, I dare you to say no, you know? Same thing with athletes. When people are like, that whole thing when people are like, why won't you just like take $15 million less so your team can sign a second? No, it's like, no,
you take $15 million less.
You take $15 million less, man. You do. Yeah. Well, how about, here's who needs to take the hit. The billionaire who owns a stadium. That's who should be taking less. Not
comparatively, like, would you, assistant manager at the rental car place, take $15,000 less? Like, no, you wouldn't.
Yeah, but they've done a very good job of painting these athletes as selfish for wanting to max out. I'm like, no, I think it's the conglomerates. I think the conglomerates should just pay them what they're worth. You know, like, I don't think LeBron James is the selfish one here. I think it's the nameless, faceless billionaires who refer to themselves as his owner who maybe need to take the financial hit. That's weirder to me.
That's a crazy thought, Chris.
Than a kid from Akron, Ohio wanting to get paid.
Yeah,
I think.
Okay, so before we get you out of here, and then we got
I just went on a weirdly political, economic, Woody Guthrie-esque rant. My bad. Is that what usually happens here?
Absolutely, man. I love that. I love that we're getting to that side of you. As far as music goes, that can happen with bands too.
Oh,
you see your favorite band. I always feel bad, or not feel bad, but I always take note, I guess, the people with the band tattoo of the band that's never going to disappoint them. And then it's like, well, they got this song on a movie and now they get to tour for the rest of their lives and not have to go work at the postal office.
Well, I tell you, my show has music on that's very important to me. We've always gone like the DIY route. And then we went we were on public access for over 4 years. And there was a certain type of person that really saw it. Then we switched to cable. A lot of those people walked away, and I was like, oh, I know how Jawbreaker feels now. I don't know if you're a punk fan.
Jets of Brazil, Jawbreaker, yeah.
And it's funny enough, I've become friends with the drummer from Jawbreaker, and it's like a funny thing.
Pinch yourself a little bit when you're like chit-chatting.
Well, he's such a down-to-earth dude, and I was able to say, like, that whole thing where your fans would show up and turn their back when you played stuff from your major label album, I'm like, oh, I kind of get it now. But yeah, it's the whole idea of selling out is a thing in my life where some of my fans say I have, and I get it, but I'm also like, yeah, but then these people who just worked in a public access show get to eat, and they don't have to walk dogs anymore either, and I'm also proud of that.
Yeah, it is.
Selling out's a weird thing.
Do you know the band Lucero?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so Lucero, I think they're huge Jawbreaker fans too. They've done a few covers of theirs.
I think they've done a bunch of Smiths covers. I'm a big Smiths guy.
Yeah. So I've talked to them, and their organist, I'm trying to think, Rick, who he plays the thing with the
accordion.
Accordion. He'll play accordion and keys and
this
stuff.
Was accurate enough.
Right.
This was accurate enough physically for me to understand.
he's toured with like Hank Williams Jr. and stuff and I've talked to him before, and the difference, he's like, man, Lucero's the perfect band to tour with. He's like, we're popular enough, we make some change. We sell out everywhere. We play smaller venues. Everybody's really happy to see us, and we're all friends in the band. And he expressed this in an interview. He was telling me, Hank Williams Jr., he's like, you don't look Hank Williams Jr. in the face. He's like, you guys we don't talk. We're there, you go out, you play, and then you're done. And if you fuck up, you're going to hear about it from a manager or somebody else. So it's weird assessing those different levels and the success attached on each side too.
It's a strange thing.
It is, man. Well, I think everybody needs to go see you at Helium this weekend. Great feature, great opener as well. Go to Helium Comedy Club in St. Louis.
It'll be more jokes and less weird working class philosophy rants.
This is what it's all about, man. Well, I hope that TruTV renews that. I hope they give you another chance, man.
We'll see. And if they don't, I think everybody's surprised we took it this far anyway.
Well, congrats on the success either way. Thanks for coming by, dude.